Hello, everybody. Just before I came online, as I said in my little message, the cockatoos went crazy, but they've gone away again now. Oh, it's because the peacock's out the back, revving them up, getting them overexcited. Anyway, we got some bird song today. That'll be fun. Hello, everyone. Hello, Rob and Deb. Hello, Kay. We've already started chatting. Hello, Craig. So, Craig, is Joan able to join you guys again now? I hope so. And hello, Karen, as well. Okay, I said hello to Rob and Deb. Hello. Cotty and John, g'day. Well, this is very strange. I think I've been inside all day, so I didn't get to enjoy the lovely sunshine during the day. And when we took the dogs for a walk, it's just cold air again. Anyway, I can't complain. It's I'll be complaining it's too hot soon, and it's good Pinot drinking weather, so I think we should get on with it. Who else is there? Hello, Matt and Renee. Lovely to see you. And to Neil, good to see you too. And Alison, hurrah, hurrah. Michael, you're back. Michael, it's a tricky one, and we'll talk about that quite a lot. But, you know, there's, yeah. Lachlan, how you going? Oh, you missed last week. That's all right. You're here today. It's all good. You can watch back on the session last week if you want to, but it's all good fun. Sharpie and Rod, g'day. It's lovely to see you on Sunday, and also Cotty and John. Hello, Emily. Hello, Anne-Marie. Hello, Sid. Jones brought around the cheese and mushroom tarts. Good work. Hello, Sarah. How you going? Daryl and Sue, g'day, g'day. Oh, Michael, you're up there in Sydney. How lovely. Hello, Sam and Paul. Great to see you. All right. Now, because I've told you you're not allowed to start eating yet, I hope you haven't. If you have, it's okay. It's okay. Hello, Jeremy. Angela, making the most of the icy spring glass. Coq au vin, fantastic. You're so good, Angela. You haven't eaten anything. I promise I'll be quicker today than I was last week. Everyone's like, can we eat now, please? Jeremy stirring mushroom risotto. Excellent. All right. Before I open the wine, I told you I had a little trade trick for you. Good work, Kay. So the trade trick, itchy nose, hay fever and cold weather, fantastic. So we've got our little half bottle, and we've got our bottle of Bourgogne Rouge here, and I need, well, look, this is totally up to you. If you don't want to keep some for next week, that's fine. It'll just make next week a little more straightforward and less comparison-y. So depends how long you want to take this kind of comparative tasting gig along. But my suggestion is that if you can bear to do it, save half a bottle of this in your clean, empty half bottle from last week. Keep it till next week, and we'll compare this same wine with the Devil Bean Creek Pinot next week. I think it'll be really cool. I think it'll be really interesting. So my trade trick is, before you start putting the wine into the half bottle, take the lid off, get your soda stream, and normally with all the soda streams are a bit different, but this one, normally this sticks out and you put the bottle on the nozzle, which squirts the carbon dioxide into the water. So instead, we're going to just push that in. I'm going to tilt you down so you can see what I'm doing. And then you get your bottle and you stick it up under the nozzle, and then you just give it a little, and you can see the CO2 going into the bottle. Then you take it off really carefully. Now, if you treat that bottle really carefully, you can pop the lid back on again. Carbon dioxide, hang on, where are you? Carbon dioxide is heavier than air. So even if you do that a little bit ahead of time, so if you've got your soda stream, you know, plumbed into the wall or in the other room, we're not making sparkling Pinot, Rob and Deb. We're putting carbon dioxide into an empty bottle. And what we're doing for that is making sure that we don't have any oxygen in the bottle before we put the wine in. So here's one that I prepared earlier, because I always get nervous doing my little pouring in front of the thing. So once you've got your CO2 in your empty bottle, then you just take it over to where your bottle is open. You take the little lid off, and then you pour very gently half the bottle that you've just opened into the half bottle, all the way up to the top, as close to the top as you possibly can, and then do it slowly the whole way so that you're not displacing the CO2 and letting oxygen in, and then you take it all the way up to the top, and then you stick the lid on, do it up really tightly, and here's one I prepared earlier. That's a bottle. You can see if I turn that upside down, there's hardly any bubble in it. It's full all the way up to the top. So that wine is going to keep in really good condition for 7 days, and we'll come back to this next week and enjoy that with the other bottle of Pinot, the Devil Bean Creek. So you put that away, you hide it from yourself, because it's really easy when you've had a couple of glasses of wine to go, I just might get that other half bottle and have a little bit more of a tipple. So now you've got your half bottle of Bourgogne Rouge, you better put some in a glass. See, it's like juggling. Rob, you put argon on top. That's fine as well. Argon can work too. It's probably better to put the argon into the bottle again before you put the wine in, because again, the argon will just kind of stay on top of the wine and float up and displace any oxygen. So it should be fine. But if you put the argon on top after you put the wine in, it kind of sometimes just kind of bounces off the wine and goes out, and you've still got oxygen in there. Anyway, there's your Bourgogne Rouge, 2017, Lucien Musard et Fils. There you go. Sparkling wine cleanser. Angela, you can have a sparkling wine cleanser as well if you'd like to. But no, that's my little sneaky trick. It's just, it just protects the wine from protects your wine from oxygen. That's all. Oh, what's Jeremy saying? Rob and Deb, if you want to buy one to do this, make sure it's not the screw the water bottle in place type. The straight seal type is the one you want. There you go. Alison, I think Rob is probably being serious, because a lot of people have little argon guns. We tried one at Moorooduc for a while. We actually found that the argon scalps the wine a little bit, so we prefer to use carbon dioxide rather than argon. It's quite expensive as well. But if you're finding it's work, then that's great. Moorooduc Estate Pinot Noir 2018 is going in my second glass. So I've got my Burgundy on the left and my Moorooduc, get that open, into the glass on the right. Alrighty, now we're cooking with gas, carbon dioxide. Somebody else said something, Michael, but if you travel and take your full half bottle with you, leave the other half bottle in Melbourne, it's not enough to fill the other half. Yeah, then Michael, you just better drink it and work out what you're going to do next week. Will you be home next week to drink the other half bottle? I don't know. Anyway, good luck. What you can do at the end of the session, in fact, I'll tell you right now, Ian Cameron is saying, can you send me the link? Ian's our distributor, so please bear with me while I just do this. He's on the mailing list, so I don't know why he didn't get the link anyway, but here we go to Ian. Sorry, this is very boring. Have a little smell of the wines while I'm doing this. There you go, Ian. And just make sure you don't get them confused. They're quite different, so Nareem and Keely, it's a good question who leaves their half bottles at the end of the night. I do personally often, because I live by myself, and drinking a whole bottle of wine whenever I feel like a glass of wine is not a great idea for my general well-being. So half a bottle of wine is actually quite good for me on my own. Hello, Paul and Roz and Peter and Karen and Jan and Bruce. I got a photo from Karen with all your glasses. It was absolutely fantastic. And so hopefully they've all got Pinot Noir in them now. Okay, Alison, I'm not sure because I haven't smelled it yet. Let's do the Burgundy first. Well, let's grab them. Let's be a bit of double fisting, one in one hand, one in the other. That's all that means, holding two glasses at once. It's not rude, as far as I know. If it is, I don't know. They're quite similar in colour. So let's have a little smell of the Burgundy first. So really lovely strawberry, raspberry fruit. There's lots of, it is very floral, Craig. It's got some more kind of rose petal, violet kind of aromatics. There's a slightly earthy, yes, we put them in 375ml bottles to reduce the air contact. That's right. So this is a very, so let me tell, actually, no, let's just compare and contrast. Then you can start eating and I'll tell you about the wines. How's that for a good idea? And then I'll tell you how you can buy them, because if you drink the whole bottle of Burgundy and you want to get another bottle of the Burgundy for next week, then you can probably do that, and I'll tell you how in a little bit. So beautiful floral nose. There's a little kind of earthy, farmyardy kind of a smell on the nose of that Burgundy. It's not overt. It's not I don't think it's a spoilage yeast character. I think it's just a savoury, slightly reductive character. I really like it. It's kind of got a little wild berry kind of a character too. Now, the Moorooduc on the nose, I think for me, so Alison said red currant. I get less red currant, but I always think I always think of red currant and Cabernet as being very sort of similar in their aromas. And for me, that Moorooduc is more, it's red cherry and there's some raspberry and there's a little bit of strawberry there, but it's really kind of, it's sort of it's the fruit. The French wine's the fruit that you go and pick in the wild forest. It's got more fragrance, but it's less less ripe, less kind of intense dark fruit flavours. The Moorooduc has got, oh, maybe Alison, when I put it in my mouth, it will taste more like red currant. The Moorooduc on the nose has that sort of that fruit that's been grown specifically to sell to people in a really good fruit shop, that's got real intensity and sweet fruitedness and concentration. It's a bit more, it's a little bit less sauvage, a little bit more concentrated. But the Moorooduc is, Craig's saying the Moorooduc's like digging through a forest compared to the floral characters of the Burgundy. And I think that's right. There's some real kind of earthy, leaf litter, mushroomy, truffly kind of character on the nose of the Moorooduc. It seems much darker and richer at the moment. So let's have a little taste. The Burgundy, like all Burgundy, is very structure driven on the palate. The nose is very perfumed. The palate, as I think Michael mentioned, has got it's got a really tangy acid line. The tannins are there; they're firm but fine, but it's very acid driven. The fruit is quite restrained, red fruited. And there's not a lot of sort of earthy or mushroomy kind of complexity on that wine at the moment, but it's a very young wine, and I'll tell you a little bit more about it in a moment. Aniseed on the Burgundy, Alison? I think there is a little aniseedy fennel kind of herbal note there. Absolutely. Really, really tangy. It's got almost like there's a salad that I like to make with rocket and fennel, and you sort of chop it all up and just dress it with olive oil and lemon juice and salt and pepper. And there's that sort of herbal kind of almost nettly, fennelly, aniseedy character on that on the Burgundy. A little bit of star anise as well. Okay. Excuse me. I can never sneeze just once. It's always twice with me. Just so you know. The Moorooduc, on the other hand. It absolutely shows, Michael, those Mornington flavours. It's on the nose, it was more red fruited. On the palate, it's really dark cherry. There's still that little kind of raspberry note. For me, Alison, it's more sort of pomegranate and than thank you, Nerium. It's more pomegranate tanginess than red currant, but I'm with you. I'm in that. I'm going down that sort of path as well. Very cherry fruited, but then you've got all that lovely kind of savoury forest floor, mushroomy notes, herbal notes in that wine as well. It's just quite a lot darker, quite a lot heavier. Now that you've smelt and tasted both of these, we can keep talking about them, but you're welcome to start eating now. Okay. So please feel free to tuck into your food while we keep talking about these wines. You've been very, very good. And it's just nice to sort of taste them on a really clean palate without any food getting involved. And I think you'll find with food, they'll change again. So Cotty's saying that the Burgundy smells a bit dusty. Yeah, I know what you mean. It's sort of it's like dried out dirt, so dust, yeah. It's always that kind of savouriness that I get from Burgundy. And so, first of all, when I was choosing these wines, there are a couple of oh, Michael, that's a good question. Don't let me forget to answer that in a minute. And I agree, Craig, the Moorooduc is really intense after the Burgundy. Now, there's a couple of reasons for that. Burgundy has a bit of a premium price set on it because it's Burgundy. So even really entry-level Burgundy starts out being relatively expensive. So trying to find a wine that was going to sit in about the same price point as the Moorooduc Estate, because I think really to make the box affordable, and also to compare like with like, if you go to the shops and say I've got $40 to spend on a bottle of wine, I didn't want to put in a bottle that was going to be worth a lot more money for that, because it would have made the box more expensive, and it would also have been an unfair comparison, because not many of us are prepared on a day-to-day drinking basis to spend, $150, $200, $500 on a bottle of Burgundy when we can buy really good Australian Pinot for $40, $50, under $100, let's say. So Richard's just arrived. There you go, Richard. There's the Burgundy for your left glass, and there's the Moorooduc Estate for your right glass. No worries. So the Burgundy that I've chosen is imported by our distributors. The producer is Lucien Musard, and it's just a Bourgogne Rouge. So it's a very entry-level Burgundy. It's kind of as entry-level as you can get, but it's a good producer who has quite modern winemaking techniques. So it's quite for Burgundy. It's quite fruit-forward. It's quite generous. It's made really simply. I was talking to Ian. He's hopefully. Have you got on yet, Ian? Did you get the link? I haven't heard back from Ian. So hopefully he's on, and he might, if he gets a chance, he might say hello and give us some extra information. But I was talking to him today about this wine, just to make sure that I had all the details correct. And you will notice that it's a 17 and the Moorooduc Estate is an 18. And I'm not concerned about that, because basically it's impossible to taste wine from Burgundy and from Australia that is exactly the same age, because our vintages are 6 months apart. So this is 6 months older than the Moorooduc Estate is. But if we use the 18 version of this wine, then it would be 6 months younger than the Moorooduc Estate. So it's the same comparison, really, as far as age is concerned. These guys work really hard on just growing nice fruit and not doing anything too complicated to the wine in the winery. So Ian tells me that it's fermented in stainless steel. It doesn't see any stalk. So it's all about trying to capture as much of the fruit as possible and keep it kind of simple and fruity and direct. And for the Australian palate, that's a bit surprising to hear, I think, for a lot of people, because you taste that wine and it's quite savory. It's got those dusty notes. It's a bit more acid driven. It doesn't have the plumpness of the Moorooduc Estate, all of those things. And the two reasons for that is that Burgundy doesn't give that sort of plumpness, and you need to go up a long way in price and quality to get sort of complexity and depth, and you're still going to get savoriness and structure and a sort of austerity to the wine that we're not used to in Australia. And Australian Pinot Noir, which has come along in leaps and bounds in the last 30 years, offers this incredible plushness and complexity and gorgeousness, and is ridiculously good value for money compared to Burgundy, because it's less famous than Burgundy. So also we have to pay for the import taxes and all that kind of thing for bringing Burgundy into the country, but that's actually not that much difference from the tax that we pay on wine that we buy, that's made in Australia as well. Okay. Let me see what people are saying. Craig, it is really hard to go backwards from the Moorooduc to the Burgundy, which is why I got you to pour the Burgundy first and look at the Burgundy first, because it is a lighter, more savoury, more acid-driven wine, as we've already discussed. And yeah, so what Jeremy is saying is that sometimes the more prominent structure you find in entry-level Burgundy can make it look a bit rough and rustic at the same price point. And I agree. I think the way I sort of describe that is that cheaper Australian Pinot Noir is all about kind of juicy, simple fruit and lacks structure and definition, whereas cheaper, simple Burgundy has all the structure, but it lacks fruit plushness. So they're sort of at the opposite ends of the structure, at opposite ends of the spectrum. And as you go sort of up in price and quality, both with Australian Pinot and with Burgundy, then you add complexity into the wine. And so with the Burgundy, you're adding more fruit plushness, more flavour, more depth, more intensity, more complexity onto that structural shape, and also structure will become more intense as well. Even very expensive Burgundy is structure dominant when it's young, whereas Australian wine, as it gets more expensive, higher quality, it still has that plushness of fruit, but it builds in complexity and it builds often in structure. And that's certainly the case for us at Moorooduc. And we work quite hard to get structure into all of our wines. So we're a little unusual in the Pinot Stakes as far as Australia is concerned. So I think it's pretty interesting. I just want to make sure that I don't miss any questions before they disappear up into the ether. So Michael was asking, does this mean Burgundian clones planted here become Mornington? And yeah, basically the clones of Pinot Noir that do well in Australia are mostly from Burgundy. They've been selected out mostly by Dijon University. Excuse me, a bit sniffly tonight. The pollen's getting to me. So we have a lot of clones that have come originally from Burgundy here in Australia, but we also have clones that have maybe come from Burgundy but have been here for a really long time and might have come via America as well. So all Pinot Noir originated in Burgundy and in France in the first instance, but there was quite a lot of Pinot Noir that got exported to California in the 1970s, I think. I'm not sure if there was any before that, but yeah, around about the 1970s, maybe a little bit in the 1960s. Those vines, when they've been planted in Californian soil and grown for a long time, have evolved a little bit and mutated a little bit. And so you develop different clones that have become clones that originate from UC Davis as far as Australia is concerned. We also have a clone called MV6 that came to Australia in the 1800s. very early on in European settlement of Australia, and was grown here in New South Wales for over 100 years before anyone saw the value of it. So even though that clone came from, we believe, Clos Vougeot in the first instance, it had been in the Hunter Valley for about 100 years, and had mutated and acclimatized to that Australian climate. So MV6 now is a clone that we regard as the Australian clone, because it's had the time to adapt to our climate, and it does very, very well as sort of a base clone. So in the answer to your question, Michael, yes and no. I think clones become less important when you plant them in different places, and as the vines get older, their clonal difference, according to the French, become less important as well. So we get kind of geeky about clones, and it's interesting to see how they all sort of work together. But you know, the clone difference is only one thing that creates the difference, and where you grow the grapes, the site, if you want to use the French word for it, terroir, is much more important, as well as what the human influence is to the vineyards, you know, what is done to the vines while they're growing, and then the grapes when they come into the winery. Now, Michael, you've also asked about DRC versus the Duck. Domaine de la Romanée-Conti is wine that I've had the opportunity to taste a few of those wines over the years. Now, just for anyone who doesn't know what we're talking about, Domaine de la Romanée-Conti is probably the most famous Burgundy domain. Domaine Loire is also up there, and Domaine de la Romanée-Conti wine, a bottle of their wine at release these days is about $1,000, and you can't buy it for love nor money anyway. So they release it as a mixed case, so you get all the different vineyards that they produce in this mixed case. They make sometimes just a barrel of each of the wines, so you have to buy the whole case. It's, you know, maybe $12,000 or more to buy the case if you are offered an allocation. You can't just go to the shop and say, I'll have a case of DRC. So the question of comparing DRC to the Duck is slightly outrageous in some ways, because it is the best of the best in Burgundy, and whenever I've had the chance to taste it, it has been, and I haven't tasted it recently because it's got more and more expensive and harder to get. Sadly, the Chinese discovered Burgundy a few years ago, and so a lot of the allocation goes to wealthy Chinese and wealthy Russian collectors these days. But if I could get hold of a bottle of DRC or a bottle of the Duck and I didn't have to pay for it, I'd have the bottle of DRC. I mean, you know, it's one of those unicorn wines. It's always been amazing when I've tasted it, but the reality is that it's almost impossible to buy. It's almost impossible to find. It's so expensive. How can you justify drinking it? So as far as practicality is concerned, I'm very happy that I can access the Duck and drink that when and how I want to. I would never be so presumptive as to put wine up against DRC, although Dad did once at was it DRC? No, oh no, it wasn't DRC. It was another famous Burgundy producer at the Pinot celebration many years ago, and it wasn't Dad's choice. It was just that the wines were chosen. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking about DRC and see if I can. I'm going to stop talking about that, Dad, because people are asking lots of questions, so you can't go into it now. And anyway, you have to come on the camera if you're going to talk to people. Okay, sorry, I have to scroll back. Shell has said Burgundy becomes slippery, soft, and slightly sweet with our venison with onions and hazelnut and red wine sauce. That sounds delicious. I think that would be very, very good with that sort of food. From a marketing point of view, the French are masters, says Alison. I'm not sure I'd want to spend the amount on French wine that would be, and that's exactly the point, Alison, that I think needs to be made. That if you've got endless amounts of money and you just want to taste the best wine in the world, a lot of people would say go and buy very expensive Burgundy. It doesn't mean, even if you spend $1,000 on a bottle of really expensive Burgundy, it doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to like that more than the Australian Pinot Noir that you are able to drink on a semi-regular basis and that your palate is used to. So it's all about what your personal taste is, what your experience is, and what you're looking for in wine. And I think that a lot of people find Burgundy really disappointing, and it's partly because they go, I'm going to spend lots of money on a bottle of Burgundy, but they think $100 or $150 is a lot of money to spend on a bottle of Burgundy, and it's just not. Unfortunately, I mean, it's a lot of money, but you need to spend even more usually to get a really good bottle of Burgundy that's going to knock your socks off. So you're always going to have that sort of juxtaposition of sort of savouriness, and also if you drink more Burgundy and less Australian wine, you'll probably start to find Australian wine a little bit too fruity and a little bit too obvious and a bit too generous. And that's the argument that you get from people in the UK who drink a lot of Burgundy and then taste Australian wine. They say, oh, it's very fruity, it's very fruit driven. It doesn't have the sort of elegance and restraint and acid line that we're looking for in a good Pinot Noir. So our experience of Pinot Noir here is so different from the experience of a wine collector in London, for example. Although they're getting onto Mornington Peninsula Pinots these days, and we're getting really lovely praise for our Pinots as well. So it's partly a marketing point of view, Alison, but it's also what people are looking for, what they expect, and also how much money they've got to spend on things and what they grew up on. I've got friends who have got Burgundy that they bought maybe 30 years ago that would probably be exquisite if they opened it now, but they can also sell it for $1,000 a bottle or more and pay their grandchildren's school fees with the proceeds of the wine. So, you know, it's that sort of, do I drink it? Do I sell it? Is it what's going to make it more worthwhile? Am I going to appreciate it enough for it to be worthwhile opening? Whereas I'd like to say that, yes, Moorooduc Estate Pinot is delicious, but you're not going to get a huge amount for it on the secondary market. So you might as well pop it in the cellar and then open it up and drink it and enjoy it hedonistically anytime you feel like it. Cotti, because the high acid in the Burgundy would age well, even though it's meant to be drunk young. Maybe it might. Probably with this wine, it'll age well for a few years, but not for a really long time, because it doesn't have it's got the high acid, it's got the tannin structure, but doesn't have the fruit intensity to balance it out in the long term. I think it's a really lovely wine to drink now, and I think you could put it down for 3 to 5 years if you wanted to, but it's not a wine that's made for that. It doesn't have the structure, and it's made to be drunk early. So I'm not sure whether it would improve a lot with age. If Ian jumps on the chat, if he's with us at all, he might be able to tell me, because he's been selling this wine for a while, so he might have a better idea how the Bourgogne Rouge ages. Emily, at a higher price point, an Australian Pinot Noir and Burgundy would taste more similar than a low price point. Possibly, Emily, but the Australian Pinot Noir will still be more plush, and the Burgundy will still be more structured and more savoury. But they are coming closer in style and character as Australian winemakers are understanding more about how to deal with Pinot Noir and talking to Burgundian winemakers and going to Burgundy and drinking Pinot from around the world. And young Burgundian winemakers are also coming to Australia and doing vintages here and sort of learning, you know, the modern winemaking techniques that we use. So they are coming closer together, and certainly at the higher levels, you might have a little bit more confusion about which is which. But I think really usually Australian Pinot will have that core of sweet fruit and then build savoury complexity around it, whereas Burgundy will have that core of savouriness and then build some sort of complexity and more almost balsamic kind of flavours rather than that sweetness of fruit that we see. Rob and Deb are getting more out of the Burgundy after some time and some Comté. Yeah, it does need air, it does need time, and it's a wine that needs food more than the Moorooduc Estate. The Moorooduc Estate you could just happily drink a glass of while you're getting dinner ready, and then another glass with dinner, whereas the Burgundy kind of comes into its own when it's matched to the right sort of food. Jeff's been listening in, just arrived and poured the 18. Yeah, thank you, Jeff. yeah, a lot of people really like the more savoury elegance of the Burgundy style. So Lachlan, we are not. So just to clarify, because it gets a little bit. Oh goodness, I'm falling way behind on the questions. So Lachlan, I'll come back to you in a sec. Jeremy said to Emily, yes, there are still big differences. You can't replicate great Aussie Pinot Noir in the Burgundy and vice versa. That's right. You know, we're not trying to make Burgundy here. They're not trying to make Mornington Peninsula Pinot there. They probably are less inspired by Mornington Pinot than we are by Burgundy, or, you know, but you can't replicate the sort of wine that we make here in Burgundy, and we can't replicate the sort of wine that they make there. But yeah, at the top end, there are some differences. Thank you, Jeremy. Jeremy has answered for, is that the Moorooduc? So what I just wanted to say is we shorten the name of our top single vineyard wine, which is the Moorooduc McIntyre Pinot, as the Duck. So Lachlan, I'm assuming you're asking about this wine that we're drinking, the Moorooduc Estate, which is fine. Just wanted to make sure that we were answering the right question. But yes, this has got quite a lot of MB6, 114, 115, maybe a little bit able sometimes. Clone-wise. Jeremy's doing lots of answering. Thank you, Jeremy. DRC, DBC, blah, blah, haha. Craig, that's very funny. And we didn't do that on purpose at all, so there you go. Jeremy, yeah, so if you do get to taste a really great Burgundy, keep an open mind, because from my experience, the really great Burgundies have rocked my world. They've been amazing. And it's not because I've got a specially trained palate or anything like that. I'm talking about when I first started working in the wine industry back in the mid-90s, and I worked with some people who were complete Burgundy nuts. And back then you actually could, every now and again, if you pulled your money, afford to buy a bottle of DRC La Tâche or something like that and compare it to a few other top-end Burgundies. And that was really amazing. But it's a lot of money. I mean, but some people spend silly money on cars. Some people buy ridiculously expensive handbags. Some people buy shoes that are thousands of dollars a pair. Some people buy vineyards on the Mornington Peninsula. So everyone spends their money as they can afford to on what they value. And I think every now and again, I really love getting the chance to taste a really great Burgundy. Enjoy it. But I think we have incredible Pinot Noir coming out of this part of the world now, and I think that's something that we should be really excited about. Yes, Craig, I have absolutely manipulated your palates. You're in the Moorooduc Estate cult. Absolutely, you have cellar palates, and you'll never escape. Yeah. So I think I've nearly caught up. Hang on, Alison. The 1%ers are the intangibles, says Jeremy. So, and this is the cool thing. It's just fermented grape juice, but the flavors that you get sometimes in the best versions of this fermented grape juice, it's pretty awesome. It's a good cult to be part of, though, isn't it, Alison and Rob and Deb? And oh, good. Rob and Deb are wearing their cult uniform, their Wild Geese t-shirt. Is that you, Rob, wearing your Wild Geese t-shirt and blushing? That's awesome. We are a very benevolent cult, and we love you all dearly. Tennille, my mates with that fancy Burgundy, first of all, they live in Bath in the UK, and they're not opening that bottle for anyone. They're not opening that bottle for them to taste. They're not opening that bottle for me to taste. They showed me the case and said, in fact, they've probably sold it now. I'm going to sell this on the secondary market because I can send all of my grandchildren to private school on the proceeds. I went, okay, fair enough. I was a bit sad because it's actually a very it's a very famous Burgundy from a producer who is no longer with us, and it would be an absolute treat to get to taste it. But I totally understand why he wouldn't want to open it. It's also it's a sealed wooden box, and they're more collectible if you've got 6 bottles or 12 bottles in a sealed wooden box. So Yes, you have absolutely drunk the Kool-Aid, Craig. We just made it taste a little bit better. Andrew points out that all the food here tastes bolder. The lamb, the basil, actually everything but the chicken. Oh, interesting. Food-wise here in Australia as compared to France. Yeah, exactly. And the fruit as well. I find French, when you go to a French market and you buy the strawberries, they have much more red flavour to them. They're much tangier. They're very sweet, but they don't have that. They taste wilder. I don't know how to describe it except for that. It's not really a very good descriptor for it. But for me, they taste sort of wilder and tangier and sort of more musky, less kind of less dense in their flavour. Paul and Roz, loving the Moorooduc. It took a while for the Burgundy to open up. It was a little bit sulphurous at first, absolutely. And it is blowing off really nicely. And that's the thing as well with these wines, that you do need to give them time. It's why I like to drink them out of a Burgundy glass and just letting them open up and all that kind of thing. But, I've got to say, one of the reasons that I wanted to do this tasting was to show you sort of, a lot of people get really excited about Burgundy without really knowing why. And Burgundy's a beautiful place. There's a lot of beautiful wine made there. But today, there's a lot of beautiful wine made on our doorstep around the corner here in Australia. You don't need to go to Burgundy to drink great Pinot. You go to Burgundy to drink different Pinot and to have a French experience, to have a Burgundian experience. But we're so spoiled here for Pinot these days, from the Mornington Peninsula, from Macedon, from the Yarra Valley, from Tasmania, even from Geelong and from Gippsland. We're in a sort of golden age of Pinot Noir production in Australia, but I don't think that we've hit peak Pinot yet. I think it's going to keep getting better, and that's the really exciting thing about tasting these wines, which is really cool. Kay is saying a friend was told when in France at a tasting that Mornington Peninsula is probably becoming the best region for Pinot Noir in the world. Oh my God, by a French person? That's amazing. Whenever I've gone to France, they sort of, they're lovely. I love the French, but nobody said that they think that Mornington Peninsula is one of the best places for growing Pinot Noir in the world. I would like to go and spend some time with those people. Craig, when cooking Boeuf Bourguignon, they recommend Burgundy, but I fail to see how that could be a good cooking wine. Aussie wine has better fruits for cooking. So, Craig, that cooking thing is always about using the wine that the dish comes from. So Boeuf Bourguignon means beef cooked in the Burgundy way. It's a traditional Burgundian dish, and so most cookbooks will say use a bottle of Burgundy to cook it because that's what they would use in Burgundy. That's the most authentic way to make Boeuf Bourguignon. It's also a really expensive way to do it. Another good example of that is an Italian dish from Piedmont, which is brasato al Barolo, and it's basically a piece of beef that's slow cooked in a bottle of Barolo. And you can't buy a bottle of Barolo in Australia for less than probably $100 these days. And Mum made it for an event that I think it was a lunch that she was doing. And she said to Dad, Richard, I need a bottle of Barolo. And he said, you can't have a bottle of Barolo, you can have a bottle of Dolcetto. So she made brasato al Dolcetto, and it was delicious. So, when you go to those places and you have those dishes in situ, then of course they'll use the local wine. But when you're here, then absolutely, if you're making a Boeuf Bourguignon, then if you make it with a bottle of half decent Australian Pinot Noir, Dad doesn't agree with me. I think that you should always cook with wine that you're happy to drink. It doesn't need to be your best drinking wine, but it has to be wine that you're happy to have a glass of, particularly if it's got a big bit of, if the wine's a big part of the recipe rather than just deglazing the pan before you put everything else in, then using decent wine, I think, is good because it adds more complexity and flavour to the wine. But you're cooking all the alcohol out and you are changing the flavour of the wine as well. So So yes, Craig, I think cooking with Barolo here in Australia is pretty sacrilegious. But if you go to Barolo and you go to a restaurant, then try Brasato al Barolo for your main course and have it with a really beautiful bottle of old Barolo, and it will rock your socks. And it might make you think when you come home, I might have a go at making that at home, and it won't ever taste the same because the air's different here and everything's different. So what else has everyone else said? Andrew says I should replace Katrina Roundtree. Thank you, Andrew. I think Katrina Roundtree, she talks about lots of other stuff besides just wine and going to Burgundy and stuff, doesn't she? She's probably a little bit more rounded than me as far as presenting stuff is concerned. But thank you, that's very sweet. Rob and Deb, I once went halves in a bottle of Chateau Haut-Brion with a mate, and the maniac insisted using some of it in the wine reduction sauce. Yeah, see, that's crazy. If you're going to spend that much money on wine, why would you put it in? That said, if you ever get a bottle of really fancy wine under cork and you open it, it's horribly corked, it has cork taint, then use that, because the cork taint, Cotty, you've just asked the same question. Cork taint cooks out of wine, and you're left with the beautiful wine that you had before the cork ruined it. So then you're getting sort of all the advantages. You're getting your high quality wine that you can't drink because it's been ruined by the cork, but you can still cook with it because the cork taint goes away, and you get that lovely wine reduction flavour of the beautiful wine. So it's a lose win-win situation. So cork taint is terrible and very disappointing. Lachlan, mind blown. Excellent. But yes, cork tainted wine. I always say, if you get a bottle of wine that has cork taint, my first default would be to return it to the person that you bought it from. If you bought it from a retailer or from a winery, send it back and say, please send me a not faulty bottle. But if it's something usually it's something that's come out of your cellar that you've had for 10, 15 years that you've been saving for a special occasion, right? And you pull the cork out and you go, well, I can't really return it to the person I bought it from because that retailer no longer exists, or they won't be able to replace it anyway. So if you've got the opportunity if you don't have the opportunity to get it replaced, then rather than just throwing it down the sink, get yourself some really good meat and make a stew out of it or something like that. Use it for cooking. Do a Brasato al Barolo, but with whatever, if it's red wine, if it's white wine, make yourself something lovely that needs to be cooked in white wine, because it'll still bring lovely flavour to the food. So I think that's awesome. Alison, your new house has a 200 wine rack. Don't worry, I reckon we've already filled that, haven't we? If we haven't, I reckon we could give it a pretty good nudge. I'm glad you're enjoying the comparison tastings. I think it's been really fun. Do you know what? We've been going for 48 minutes already, and I've been talking nonstop. I've hardly tasted the wines. You guys are awesome. I love your questions. I love your discussion, and I'm loving that this is a format that you're enjoying. It's something that we should think about if we decide that we want to continue doing this next year. And this is where I kind of just bring up very quickly, you bloody drunk them. Well, we can help you buy some more, Alison. That's okay. So a couple of things. If you guys still want to keep coming back and doing Drinks with Kate next year when you've got a life and you've got places to go, I'm absolutely up for continuing with this. So if you could give me some feedback over the next couple of weeks, that would be lovely. And I won't be offended either or upset or I'll be a little bit heartbroken. But if life is getting too busy and you've got children to look after or sporting fixtures to go to or friends to see or whatever on Thursday nights, I totally understand. This was something that we started doing to fill in the empty hours of lockdown when we couldn't do anything. And I think it did its job very well. I'm hoping we're never going to have to go back there again. But as long as you guys keep coming, I will keep doing Drinks with Kate. So there's the deal for you. Samantha, I love that saying. The Istrians say, as far as making risotto, if you like drinking good wine, so does the rice. And I think with risotto, because it's it's so focused on so few ingredients. If you use crappy wine, then you can completely ruin it. So yes, risotto is something that needs good wine. Cotty's just said all their friends know that Thursday's sacred, and that's absolutely cool. As I said, if you want to keep Thursday for Drinks with Kate, I'm absolutely here for you guys. Might have to go on holiday every now and again, but I might even take you with me when I can. So the other bit of news that I had to tell you is if you've enjoyed the Burgundy, the red Burgundy tonight and the Chablis last week, our distributors, Vintage and Vine, who bring both of those wines in and lots of other wines besides, have a retail wine site. It's called Buzz Wines. So if you Google Buzz, B-U-Z-Z, wines, or buzzwines.com.au, you'll get onto it. And Ian has told me that if you use the code IMPORTS, IMPORTS 2020, and it's not case sensitive, so you can use upper or lower case, you will get a 20% checkout on Buzz Wines, and that's for orders of 12 or more bottles, so you have to buy a dozen at least. And if you spend over $300, they won't charge you freight. So there you go. If you like those wines, that's the best way to get them. You get a little discount and you get free freight, and they'll send them to you. But if you want to buy them through your local retailer, if they're a good retailer and they have that sort of thing, tell them it's Vintage and Vine who brings them in. So I think that would be very, very cool. I have one other little bit of news, and I know some of you are probably already left because it's dinner time. I've had a couple of requests for Drinks with Kate hoodies after the event because they're so cool and everyone loves them so much. If anybody wants another hoodie or missed out on the hoodie in the first instance, we're not going to do the tracky pants again because it's just all too hard. But if you missed out on a hoodie or you know someone who wants one, can you please email me this week, kate@moorooducestate.com.au, and we can only order more hoodies if we have a minimum of 20. So I want to, and they're not going to print them until after Christmas. But I just want to get a feeling for if anyone needs a hoodie, because then they'll get rid of the artwork and then we won't be able to do it again. So if anyone feels like they've missed out and they want one, or they've got a friend who's got terrible hoodie envy, let me know in the next week. Send me an email. That would be awesome. I love that you all love Drinks with Kate. And I love you too. You're all awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to go. It's like past 50 minutes. It's ridiculous. Cheers, everyone. Here's to Burgundy and Moorooduc Estate Pinot Noir. I'll see you next week for Devil Bean Creek and the other half of that bottle of Burgundy. Cheers, everyone. Mm.